Welcome to the Hangar Z Podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicast and in partnership with Vertical Valor Magazine. In this episode, I sit down with co-hosts Jack Schonely and Bryan Smith for an in-depth conversation with Tactical Flying's Ryan Welch.
So we're spinning up and I turn avionics on, the radios come up, and all of a sudden I hear just chaos going on Northern, and they're putting information out, and I'm listening, and it's, a hot call, no one's on scene yet, and they're constantly feeding in. And we got another RP calling saying more shots are fired.
Ryan, a seasoned law enforcement officer turned Major League Baseball authenticator, shares his remarkable journey from serving 16 years at the San Diego Police Department to becoming a senior tactical flight officer specializing in airborne thermal imaging and airborne law enforcement tactics. During the conversation, we discussed the vital role of training, mentorship, and community involvement, as well as the evolution of technology and law enforcement operations. From scenario-based training to the integration of unmanned systems, Ryan, a tactics instructor for Tactical Flying, provides invaluable insights into ensuring operational safety and effectiveness, highlighting the critical importance of ongoing continuous training. Whether you're interested in aviation, law enforcement, or leadership, this episode delivers expert knowledge and inspiring stories from a truly accomplished professional. Thank you to our sponsors, Shotover Systems, BLR Aerospace, and Robinson Helicopter Company.
Welcome to the Hangar Z Podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z Podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like they're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, threw the shotgun, threw something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
Hey, welcome to the Hangar Z Podcast. I'm your host, Jon Gray. I have a really cool conversation lineup for today. We've got 3 co-hosts today instead of 2. We've got, we'll call him the bonus host. A friend of ours who's actually been away from the industry for a little bit, still been a part of the podcast, still closely joined with our community, still teaching in our community, and obviously friends all over the world as a result of the training that he's done in our community. So Bryan Smith, welcome back as our bonus host.
Thank you for having me. It's always good to hang out with you guys. I appreciate it.
Sir. Yes, sir. And then we got the commander, Jack Schonely. How you doing, sir?
Very good. Until you called me commander. Everything was good up until that point.
I love to see your facial expressions when I call you the commander.
This shit in my head.
It goes into what we'll talk about here in a little bit, how leadership isn't a rank, and we talk about leadership a lot in the podcast, and everyone on the screen has had some role in developing our industry, training our industry, and making our industry a little better. And Jack, you've done that even without the so-called rank that you didn't hold at LAPD, but you've done a lot to shape our community, and you've put a lot of time into doing that. So in my mind, you're the commander.
Thank you, John.
Yes, sir.
You just justified it. Now I can forgive you now.
I have this overwhelming urge to give you the Spaceballs salute every time he says that. So it's everything. I'm sitting on my hands.
I do hear that there's a Spaceballs 2 coming out.
Yes.
Cannot wait.
Could be epic. Well, our guest today is one we've had a lot of conversations with about joining us on the podcast, and it hasn't worked out until now. So Ryan Welch, you all know Ryan from Tactical Flying. Prior San Diego PD has a really interesting background. He and I both have a passion for baseball, and he's involved with Major League Baseball in a way that's pretty unique and pretty cool. So I have some questions for him on that. But Ryan, thanks for joining us. Welcome to the podcast.
Absolutely. Happy to be here, finally. It only took, 10 years?
Yeah, wow. So you were talking to him about 5 years before you even started the podcast.
Before it was even
there.
there.
Ryan.
Yep.
Ryan, great. In addition to doing what he's doing with Major League Baseball and his role at Tactical Flying, with San Diego PD, you developed a really unique skill set as a TFO operating the FLIR cameras, and people around the world have learned from you and that skill set you developed. So excited to dig into that, talk to you about how you developed that skill set and how you're leaning on that and how you're benefiting our community through your knowledge and through Tactical Flying with that. So thanks again for joining us. If you can, just start off talking about yourself, a little bit about your background, how you got into law enforcement and aviation and what you're currently doing with tactical flying and Major League Baseball.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was born in 1978 in Los Angeles, California. Born and raised in LA. Went to Loyola High School downtown. After that, matriculated down to University of San Diego in the lovely south of California, and kind of worked through a whole bunch of different jobs. And then finally, I actually took a dive into being a foster parent. I was working at a group home, and this kid made a connection, and I kind of saw him going through the whole ranks of group homes and seeing how things were not really lining up for his success. And so I said, God put it on my heart, and I'm going to become a foster child or a foster parent, and kind of went through the whole process. At the time, I was working on an ambulance as an EMT. But the agency said, hey, if you're going to be a foster parent, you can't work 24-hour shifts. I was obviously would be a single parent at that point. And I said, okay, well, screw it. I'll go become a police officer. And started the whole process, and he kind of rode along that process with me. San Diego PD hired me up, and had a great 17 years with them, and just had an absolute blast. A lot of fun working down there, worked around some great experienced officers that molded me not only as an officer, but also as a human being as well. And, to this day, I can't be more thankful for what they gave me.
Wow. What a unique entry into law enforcement.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's about as pure of a motivation as I've ever heard
for
someone to join a career field.
Yep. Single father with a foster child who was 15 at the time, going through the academy.
Wow.
That was something else.
Yeah.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
That's definitely a calling, and not many people answer that calling, and so I commend you for doing that. If there was more foster parents like you, the world would be a better place. As a police officer, we all went to group homes on radio calls, and it was nonstop. And you just hear the horror stories that come out of these kids' mouths, and it's heartbreaking, so really cool that you stepped up and did something about that, and put things in your own hands. Yeah, that's super unique. But you talked about going to San Diego, going to USD. Right. So let's back up a little bit, because you've got a passion for baseball, and I know that starts as a young man. So talk about growing up playing baseball, how that developed into high school, and then where you went from there playing baseball.
Yeah, so played baseball pretty much all my life. My dad was a huge baseball guy. He and his brother grew up in the Valley in LA. Don Drysdale grew up down the street from him.
Wow.
And so my dad was a left-handed pitcher. Obviously Donnie was right. And then his brother was a catcher. So they literally built a mound, and they would run simulation games with each other. And so obviously that baseball bug was going to be in me forever. I was adopted. My mom worked for Continental Airlines. As soon as I was able to fly, my dad had us on an airplane to Albuquerque to watch the Isotopes. And I was a little baby, and he took me over there, minor league baseball game. Then we flew back the same night, obviously with the good flight opportunities that we were given. So that was basically growing up. That was there's no doubt in my mind, you're going to play baseball. That's always going to be. My dad always coached me and taught me just a whole ton. He was super tough on me, never favored me whatsoever, to almost a fault at that point. Now you're going to get me into the story on why I coached, and damn you.
Good job, Jon.
Yeah, great. This might be the first guy crying on your podcast. Thanks.
No, but, you're not.
He makes you cry all the time, Jack. I know.
He does.
So he was coaching Little League. I told him at one point, I said, hey, I wouldn't mind getting coached by some other people. I want to kind of have a diverse coaching staff around me and kind of learn from others. He obviously instilled a great foundation in me. So he was coaching Little League at the time and said, hey, I have this catcher who's really, really good. His name is Kristen Palomo. I want you to come over and work with him. And so I went over and worked with him a little bit with some catching skills, and immediately fell in love with the coaching aspect of it. He was amazing. The kid could hit a ton, left-handed hitting catcher, which is a unicorn of all unicorns. And he could hit, and he was just a special guy. That gave me the want to go out and coach. After I had a couple of knee injuries, I started to kind of hang up the cleats a little bit and went right into coaching my junior and senior year of high school. And I loved it. Coached a whole bunch of different sports, basketball, football, volleyball, and then, of course, baseball. My freshman year of college, it was one Friday night, and I got just this inclination about 9:30, said, I need to drive home. And, we're a spiritual family, Loyola raised me, Jesuit education. And when your heart gets called, you go. And so I got in my car and I drove home. Next morning, went down to the baseball field where I coached, and not even 30 minutes there, guy comes screaming in with his car saying Christian had been in an accident. And he was playing first base during the game. The runner's running down the base path, doesn't see him till the last minute, lifts his head up and the bill of his helmet crushes his trachea.
Oh.
And Christian passed away on the field. And that stuck in my heart. He passed away in the hospital I was born in. I immediately, that was the day I became a man in my eyes. And I rushed to the hospital. I'm now talking to the youth who I was coaching and talking them through death, which I had no experience in. Mm-hmm. And that was at that point that God put on my heart, said, you're going to be a coach, and this is where you need to be. And you need to help serve others as much as you can. And from that day forward, I've been coaching. That was 1997. And wow. I've coached multiple high schools down in San Diego, got the great opportunity to coach at the University of San Diego, and I'm now back at my old alma mater, coaching there and just loving every aspect of it.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
You've been answering the call your whole life.
Amen. Yep.
That's something that a lot of people can't say.
Yep.
It's like, I commend you on all fronts for doing that.
Appreciate that.
Talk about the positivity that you exude on the kids, the folks that you're surrounded with, that you're leading on the baseball field, whether it's a baseball field, a basketball court, or a soccer field, doesn't matter. And athletics instills so much positivity into kids' lives. I love that.
Absolutely.
We just recorded with our friends from Burbank, and Pat had a very similar story, as a basketball coach.
Yeah.
In fact, I think the timing was similar where, as a junior in high school, I think he started coaching with his junior or senior, but the ability to instill those traits of leadership in those young kids that last a lifetime is invaluable, And it's interesting too, because we also talked about how folks that can coach ultimately can train, because it's the same thing, and here you are, you're coaching baseball and you're training folks in our industry, you're building our community through training at tactical flying.
Absolutely.
It's funny how these trends start to emerge and you start to kind of connect the dots and you realize how these different things are seemingly so different, but so similar, So again, really cool that you've answered the call and you find yourself at USD. For folks that don't know, USD is one of the most beautiful college campuses in the world, probably, but for sure in Southern California and in San Diego. Can you talk about your experience there and what some of the facilities were like? Because that's not a typical place to even play baseball or coach.
No, not at all. I mean, it's top notch. It's pretty amazing. Just the view itself. I mean, when you think about it, you're standing on that campus and you're looking out and you're like, wow, that's the ocean. That's pretty cool. That's SeaWorld. And it's just a great area. It's the perfect layout for a college in my eyes. Everything's right there. It's really community built. And having the opportunity to go over and coach at University of San Diego was pretty amazing. The facilities are just like a pro clubhouse. Ron Fowler did an amazing job. He basically mimicked the clubhouse after that of Petco. And when they built that, he was a minority owner with the Padres as well. And so it was pretty amazing having, pro guys come through and look at the facility and I'm like, wow, like this is just like we have, it's sometimes better than some of the minor league facilities. It was pretty electric. Made some great connections there with some great kids still to this day that, they nicknamed me T.O. and, they would all get T.O. time in the office and, talk about everything under the sun, from what's it like losing a family member to, my girlfriend broke up with me. Now I can't hit, it's just, it was everything that you could imagine, but they knew that they can come and they're like, well, T.O.'s seen it all. So, he's probably going to have an answer for me, at least somewhat of a direction to point me in. So it worked out really well. And again, like you said, it's that foundation, right? It's a way that when you just ride the wave in life and you just start collecting your experiences, then they're all used later on. And, the 17 years in law enforcement, you obviously get to see a lot and you experience a lot and you feel a lot, if you are truly connected to what you're doing, and then to be able to turn that into advice and, give some analogies and compare it and be empathetic with what they're going through and kind of give them examples, real life examples. And, then they can kind of sit back and go, oh man, maybe this isn't that bad right now, Yeah. And so it was pretty tremendous,
That is the part about coaching that I love. It's not just the skills in the field that you're instilling. It's the life skills, right? Mm-hmm. Having the perspective that you've got from your career in law enforcement to lean into kids and be like, hey, this isn't the end of the world.
Right.
Like you can help coach them through that, if you will, through these different life events that they're going through. So I think all of us here can probably think of a coach that we had at one point in our life that was really impactful, and it is just really cool that you've taken your experiences and turned that into a positive for the benefit of kids in the community. And again, going back to what you're doing in training, our community as a whole. Jack, I know as a college soccer player, you've had a lot of impact, and you've been involved with lots of teams and lots of coaches. What's your take from this conversation?
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
Well, I'm a little overwhelmed by what Ryan just talked about. I truly am. I mean, that was really an amazing few minutes there, Ryan.
All right, we're done.
Yeah. Oh no. That was incredible. I mean, your background in that is just incredible. Your heart's in it. It's not just it's not a job. It's not a position. It's your heart is in it. You're passionate about it, and you're passionate for some very unique reasons. And I love that you, at the end there, you were talking about how people would come to you and say, hey, my girlfriend broke up with me. I mean, it goes so far beyond sports. Mm-hmm. When you have that good relationship, coach-player relationship, that they can come to you. And that's a good feeling that they come to you. I mean, I'm sure that made your day, even though it might've been sad or it might've been something traumatic that you're discussing with them. The fact that they came to you, it just says a lot about you, and it says a lot about the coach-player relationship and the fact that you were willing to do that. Amazing. But to your point, Jon, yeah, coaches, have a huge impact. And I've talked about them multiple times on the podcast. It came up with Clint Pulver. It came up multiple times where, Coach Oberhalter and Coach Hill, people that really impacted me, high school and college soccer coaches in ways far beyond the soccer field. And It gets back to your point, Ryan, that the ways they impacted me were soccer, but the big ways they impacted me were life and just responsibility and, just determination and commitment and all the things that coaches talk about all the time.
Absolutely.
So it's really cool. And the translation into, teaching somebody how to operate a gimbal, how to teach somebody how to be a TFO or teach them to be a pilot or whatever you're teaching. The coach part of your life, you learn things from that benefit you later in those jobs as well. So great. That was a great start here, Ryan. Thanks for sharing the way you did. It's very special.
Appreciate it.
Bryan, for you, as a prior chief pilot at the agency you came from, I think in a lot of ways the chief pilot operates in the way that a coach does, right? Did you feel like that as the chief pilot?
Yeah, absolutely. And the point that Ryan made is being able to make a connection with people. And we've talked before the difference that we all know between being able to do something and being able to teach something.
Yeah.
And just because you do it doesn't mean you could teach it. And I think one of those skills is what Ryan was talking about, the ability to connect with people as an individual, to have some empathy. And this person that I now need to mentor is not just another nameless nugget coming through the system that, another cog in the wheel that I've got to put through the paces. This is John. This is Jack. This is Ryan. And having those skills to connect with that person. And then through that connection, now understanding that person's perspective and being empathetic to that perspective opens up the conduit to be able to teach them in an effective way. And that when you're up flying and it's just the two of you in the aircraft, and halfway through you're talking gimbal this, radio this, and then like, hey, man, this happened with my kid over the weekend, or, I was hanging out with so-and-so in the unit and I just, it was good or it was bad. And you've made that connection when you start getting that additional conversation.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that ability, you're not going to be successful as an instructor or a mentor or a chief pilot. I still like, I've been gone for a year now, and I still get regular texts from a lot of the guys that I worked with, how are the kids doing? This happened in the aircraft the other day. And, that's not to pat myself on the back, but I think that's one of the biggest accomplishments, was being able to make connections with people like that. And you still get a message a year, 2 years, 10 years later, hey, remember we talked about this that one time, or we learned this together or whatever. And last night we caught a bad guy, or we prevented an aircraft incident, or I tried that practical joke you told me about once on the new guy, and it was hilarious.
I want to hear about that.
Yeah. But a lot of people just, it's not good or bad if you have that skill, but if you don't have it, it's going to really hamper your ability to be a mentor to someone else.
Yep.
And I think that's what sets apart the great instructors and the great coaches like Ryan is.
Yeah.
Ryan, you've been in it long enough where I'm sure you've had players call you up or stay in contact with you, and they're now doing other things and going to school and jobs and careers. Yes. Isn't that a wonderful feeling when they reach out to you and tell you about what's going on in their lives?
Absolutely amazing. Just had breakfast with one of my old players a couple weeks ago, who's now the general manager of the Hard Rock San Diego.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. I mean, after his playing career and everything, and it's just sitting across from him, he's introducing me to all his employees. This is Bryan, he coached me, but then I'm sitting there just glowing, going, man, look what you have become.
Yes.
Like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
Other guys end up on the department.
Yes.
I went to give a presentation for air support.
I see this coming.
Gracious. And I'm standing in the front of the room, and I look at the front row, and I look at the name tag. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
I
have had that exact experience from someone I coaced.
And it was, I never would have thought you'd be a cop. Like, there's no shot, like, who did your background? Because obviously they didn't call me, So, but yeah, it's awesome.
We had 3 young men on a teenage soccer team that I was coaching, and both the coaches, myself, that was the head coach, and Danny Bunch was the assistant coach, and 4 people from that team ended up on the Los Angeles Police Department.
Wow.
4.
Wow.
One's a lieutenant, one's a sergeant. I mean, it's crazy, but it was and one of them I didn't know about. 2 of them I didn't actually know about. I stumbled into it. Mm-hmm. One that I saw at an air support academy thing. Yeah. And I'm looking at this kid going, man, that kid looks familiar. And he comes up afterward, hey, coach. I'm like, oh, and it just, what a feeling.
Yes.
What a feeling. Because because he immediately told you, well, you and Danny, man, I had to do this because of you and Danny. And it's a great feeling.
Right. But then you ask him, why didn't you put my name down for the reference so I could get the day off and $1,000? Like, what are you doing? Like, come on. Jeez. Yeah.
That's great.
It was pretty amazing.
Cool.
It's interesting because it really humanizes who we are as people.
a lot of kids have zero interaction with law enforcement, right? Until they come across you as a coach on the field, and they're like, oh, he's a good dude, and this isn't what I hear in the news or see on the news or whatever the negative portrayal is. No, it's a positive portion of our community. So I think we may have just cracked the code for recruitment. Here we go.
I'm telling you. Yeah. But not only that, when you really think about that as well, it also gives you balance.
Yeah.
And I think that's what is really important. And, we see our brothers and sisters out there that don't have the balance.
Yeah.
They don't have the work-life balance once you become a police officer. And to be able to kind of turn that off and be human and show human side is good for you too. Like that allows you to manage and navigate that career because, there's way too many to get lost in it. And, that's the sad part of it. And
important
so
point
it's
you just made there, Ryan.
It's really good.
Very important, and we can all, I think most cops can find a time. I know I can, and look in the beginning and say there was no balance. It was all job. And guess what? Divorce.
Yep.
I mean, it shouldn't be a shock. I look back on it and go, I'm not shocked that happened, because there was not that balance. And I corrected that. And, the second time around, there was perfect balance and with coaching and kids and interacting with other activities and success.
Right.
So I love that you brought that out, that it does create a balance in you too. Yeah. Really
absolutely.
good.
I think one of your early points, for me at least, I think I got more from coaching than they got from me as a coach. Not only the balance, but enjoying spending time with those kids and just the overall experience of it was great. So I think that's a fairly common thing for that most people experience is, getting more out of than you really give.
Right.
Which is kind of a selfish way to look at it, but it's a win-win situation. It's such a positive thing to be a part of. So really cool that you've done that. Again, USD is a beautiful facility, a beautiful place. Cool that you're still coaching high school. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement in Major League Baseball? It's a unique thing that you do there, and I hadn't heard about it, but until I talked to you.
Yeah. So I play with stickers, and they're not scratch and sniff, which is really annoying. But so authentication. So back, I'm going to say, and I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I'm going to say probably in the 90s, Tony Gwynn discovered a fake autograph in like a team store in downtown San Diego. He saw a picture, he looked at the autograph, he goes, well, that's not mine. And that sparked a whole investigation. The feds got involved, we won't talk about the feds, but so they got involved and they kind of did a whole investigation. They figured out like, hey, we need to make things authentic. So if an autograph session is going to be with a player, we're going to have somebody there who's going to witness it, say, yes, that's actually Tony Gwynn signing it, and they're going to put a sticker on it, and that's going to make it authentic. That sticker is going to have a tracking number, and it's going to go into a database. And so now they can look that tracking number up and have all of the information from that item. So fast forward, it's obviously evolved greatly with the people who are running the authentications program in New York. And now there's authenticators in pretty much every city where there's a baseball team. And we are watching the life of a baseball in a game. So umpire throws a ball to a pitcher throws it to the hitter. If the ball goes out of play, we register as out of play. If the ball is fouled off and stays within the field, it comes to us, we put a sticker on it, and now it's involved with all of those pitches that it was involved in. That was like the life of that baseball. Same thing for a bat. If a guy breaks a bat during an at-bat, the bat will come to us. We'll authenticate it, say, yes, this is the bat that was used, and it basically links it to the pitcher, to the play, to the pitch, all of that fun stuff. Pretty interesting. I'm OCD beyond all belief when it comes to stuff like that, so it was like right up my alley. I like numbers and I like being organized, and so it kind of took to it really, really well. It was a great opportunity to be able to start in San Diego when I was still working. You know, it was unfortunate how I got the position. One of our brothers got sick and couldn't do the job anymore. And he and I were pretty close. We worked together at Northern Division, and so I took his spot. We watched him then succumbed to ALS, which was pretty brutal. Seeing him from the big He-Man that he was to where ALS took him. But I kind of grew in the program and was able to have some really good experiences and just be around the game of baseball, which I absolutely love. Then moved to LA, took care of my dad, and they transferred me up to the Dodgers, which was, my team I grew up with. And now it's just an absolute dream to be able to walk into that park and be a part of those games and kind of see history, evolving with Shohei and just the amazing team that they have right now.
Yeah, as we record this, Shohei just came back and pitched for the first time last night. And
Yep.
Amazing to see the history he's making. Probably the best baseball player the world's ever seen, hands down.
Unbelievable. Yeah, the amount of talent that guy has is absolutely incredible. So we get to stand in the dugouts at Dodger Stadium. And, as a coach, you're geeking out all the way because you're listening, you're seeing how these guys are managing teams and you're seeing scenarios unfold on the field, while, of course, tracking all the baseballs and doing your job. But it's pretty incredible to be a part of those moments. Yeah.
I had no idea the authentication program was so involved. I literally thought it was just like you put a sticker on. Yep, this was in the game. I didn't realize you actually track its involvement in the game itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're watching everything that ball is doing. It's pretty incredible.
How many people are doing that, Ryan?
Thank you to our sponsor, BLR Aerospace. BLR Aerospace's revolutionary fast fin system improves performance and enhances safety across various helicopter platforms. This cutting-edge aftermarket solution improves tail rotor effectiveness, stability, and payload capacity while reducing fuel consumption and pilot fatigue. Trusted globally, FastFin delivers unmatched control, efficiency, and reliabilities for diverse helicopter operations. Learn more at blraerospace.com.
So we have two per game. And so one is on visitor side, one's on the home side. If it's a big event, we'll probably have three to kind of manage, like a World Series. There's obviously a lot more going on. And then in each city, there's usually anywhere between 5 and 7 authenticators to kind of handle the schedule. So you work anywhere between 4 to 8 games a month.
Are you on the road with them, or do you stick to LA-based home games?
Stick to LA.
Okay.
So we'll deal with, obviously, the visiting teams that are coming in as well. So you get to kind of know all the different teams. And then, you will travel for special events. Like they'll pull guys for an all-star game. They'll pull people for, like the Tokyo series, the London series, stuff like that, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, and you got to go to Tokyo this year. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. That was, when I got that call, I almost had a stroke. I didn't. I was like, what? Yes, of course I'll go.
Yeah.
And so that was absolutely incredible. I had to pinch myself every morning waking up just saying, I can't believe that I'm actually able to experience this right now.
Wow.
Pretty incredible.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Bryan, I see you. It looks like you're about to formulate a question. I see that.
I'm nodding in agreement. I have no question. I actually feel bad. I can tell he does have a little bit of OCD looking at the background. All of his picture frames lined up
They're
perfectly.
perfect, aren't they?
And I want to apologize to you if my background is bothering you, because mine looks like a kindergarten project.
Which one of your kids put that together, Bryan?
Yeah, exactly. No, this my dad put all this together. So there's Father Boyle, and I know, Jack, you know Father Boyle from Homeboy Industries up in LA.
Yes.
Big mentor of mine. Obviously, when I worked gang intervention down in San Diego, we talked a lot, and then he's obviously a Loyola High School guy.
Yeah.
He had this thing where every award that he won, he gave it away. He never kept any of his awards. And so he would give it to the homies. So homie would take home this crystal award, you know, that had Father Boyle on it. And so I really like that. And so anything that I got, I immediately shipped out to my dad.
Yeah.
And I would mail it up, and then next thing I know, I'd come home and it'd be framed. And so he calls out my wall of shame, and basically any award that I ever got, and I never kept any of them in my house in San Diego. They all came up here, and I let him kind of live my career through.
That's beautiful.
Through the experiences. Yeah.
Good for your dad for doing that. And I'm sure you're thankful for it now in hindsight. At the moment, I understand your theory there. but it's nice to have him now. And it's nice that the way you did it and how he ended up, putting that together for you,
Absolutely.
his son, who he's very proud of.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Pretty unique way of dealing with the awards that you've issued. We've talked about that a lot as it pertains to leadership. I wanted to say something funny about stepbrothers. Now he'd come in and measure the distance between the drums with his hands. I could see you doing that, but it's such an emotional story. I can't do that now.
You can make fun of mine if you want, John.
A good stepbrothers laugh. I'll never turn that down. Don't worry. That and Dumb and Dumber, you can bring that out all day long. And we're good to go.
Well, you brought up work for San Diego PD, and I realized we've spent roughly 30 minutes talking about baseball, and this is not a baseball podcast as much as I'd like it to be. The two things that I wanted to be growing up was either a professional baseball player or a pilot. And I didn't think I was going to be able to accomplish either one of them. Somehow I tricked somebody into letting me fly. So I'm thankful for that. But so going to San Diego PD, I believe I started in January of 2005 and you started in July of 2005.
Yep.
So I didn't realize that I was your senior class at one point.
You sure were.
So you were class of 64?
I was 65.
65.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think you were one up on Nick. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all three of us were running around the academy grounds at one point together
in our yellow shirts. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then Jack, he had applied. We wouldn't have been in the academy at the same time.
No, not quite. But I did apply to San Diego. Yeah. I applied there first.
No kidding.
Yeah. Back in the summer of 83, May of 83.
Wow.
I ran those steps, baby.
That would have been.
I will never forget those steps.
Was that like Academy 5 or 6? That was a bad joke. Sorry.
I'm not that old, Ryan. But
it was Roman numerals.
They don't run those steps anymore. From what I heard,
they don't run the steps.
From what I heard, I think it's too hard, so they don't run the steps anymore.
Kinder and gentler and softer and weaker.
Yeah. No push-ups on that blacktop. Yeah.
Oh, those steps were no joke, man.
Yeah. Yep.
That was a hard physical fitness test for San Diego PD. And
Agreed.
I mean, the steps were just part of it. There was walls and, real walls.
Mm-hmm.
LA's was much easier, much easier. And as a matter of fact, LA got rid of the 6-foot wall years ago. And we still joke about it and say it came at the same time as a new ordinance that there will be no 6-foot walls in the city of Los Angeles because our officers can't go over them.
Oh my gosh.
Those PT tests need to be challenging.
Absolutely.
And those steps were the real deal, man. I'll never forget that. I talked to Todd about it and Kevin about it and everybody, Matt. And it's just, that was a demanding course.
Absolutely. I don't know how I passed.
Well, San Diego is a beautiful place. It's a place that, I'm hoping at some point to go back and live. And it's one of those places as an officer, it's really tough to afford. Not many officers get to live in the city and work there as a police officer because it's just too expensive. But it's a really great place to work as an officer. There's tons of opportunities. There's lots of stuff to do. The city's challenged, I think that's the kind way of saying that, which is unfortunate because it's such a beautiful place. But the police department itself is doing phenomenal work. Doing more with less, I think, was the motto when I was there, and I'm pretty sure it's still the same. Given the budget they've got to work with, they're doing everything they can. When we actually got to see that firsthand when we went down and visited the aviation unit, which was really cool. Spending some time with them, looking at the equipment. You guys, San Diego seems like it's always been at the forefront of technology. Not just having the technology, but actually understanding how to use it. You guys. Look at you with your skill set that you've got with the FLIR cameras. So it was a great experience down there. But when you look back on the time you spent with San Diego PD, you had a lot of opportunities to do some different stuff. Was there an impactful, or I shouldn't say was there, because I know there was. What was the most impactful mission or incident that you were a part of, whether it was in patrol or a special assignment or air support?
I don't know if I can put my finger on one impactful. I mean, obviously, as far as my life is concerned, the biggest impact was when I worked gang intervention. It was funny. I threw my sucker in the mud. I got passed over for gangs the first time. And I was just telling, actually, one of my baseball players took out to breakfast this morning about this. And, I was upset. I wanted to get that gang in a job. I didn't get it. So I kind of ho-huffed and moved around. And I had a really great mentor in Jerry Hara. And, he said, hey man, just ride the wave. Like, you're going to get to where you need to be when you need to be there. Okay, fine. And so then I tried out for air support and did a lot of prep for it. Did pretty well with all the testing and everything. Got passed over for air support. Didn't get the first spot. Said, okay, well, this is really cool. 0 for 2. Not what I want for my average right now. And then all of a sudden the gang unit called and they say, hey, we got this gang intervention officer position open and I'd really like you to come down and work it and also do gang investigations at the same time. Perfect. Love it. I never would have imagined what that job and where it would have taken me. I went after probation's most challenged kids and tried to keep them on a straight and narrow, in school, away from drugs. And it got to a point to where I actually ended up fostering 5 of them.
Wow.
And because of the fact that they didn't have stable homes, judges were looking at me going like, we don't know where we're going to put this guy. And I took one and then ended up being another one, then ended up being another. And it kind of started fostering from there. And that was like the most impactful because that taught me a lot about myself. It taught me a lot about the challenges that these young men are going through, young women are going through. And it raised that empathy card, and I started to kind of see the world a little bit differently. All while, which is just funny the way it works, learning the entire city.
Yeah.
Because I was countywide and I knew streets by the back of my hand and divisions I never worked before. I knew where the homies hung out. I knew all this stuff. And then air support came along. Yeah. And they said, hey, we really need a TFO right now. Would you be still interested? And I said, absolutely. So I kind of ran both at the same time. I started a boxing program for the kids. We had boxing 3 days a week, trying to keep them off the streets. We did a Friday night and then a Sunday morning. So we always knew who was out partying and creating a ruckus on Saturday when maybe they weren't awake on Sunday, picking them up. And so I kind of ran that while I was starting out air support. But what it did is it now allowed me to be a better TFO. And it made that process a little bit easier to where I knew the whole area. And I didn't, that was, because that's the biggest hang up.
Yep.
Is knowing where you are, having an understanding of situational awareness and having that understood early allowed me to progress on other things faster. Yeah. Which, it then took it into, next levels with, some pretty high priority calls that were basically some pretty big aha moments. The biggest one was a UTC shooting. That was pretty incredible. Matt Zunish and I were on that one. And
for folks that don't remember that, can you kind of go over the nuts and bolts of what happened with that?
It was in an apartment complex in UTC area, University Town Center, which is just to the east of La Jolla proper. And it was at a pool, and there was a big party that was going on. It was a birthday party. And there was a good amount of people within the pool area. And this guy had just broken up with his girlfriend, from what I remember. There's always a girl involved. It's not only with the gangs. And was going through a rough time, financial and everything. He went down to the pool deck, and he had a gun with him and sat down on a chaise lounge. They actually offered him a beer and brought him over a beer. And he, said thanks, took the sip, put it down, and then started shooting people in the pool. And we were just spinning up to leave on our patrol flight for the night, 1800 flight. And so we're spinning up and I turn avionics on, the radios come up, and all of a sudden I hear just chaos going on Northern, and they're putting information out, and then I'm listening, and it's, a hot call. No one's on scene yet, and they're constantly feeding in. And we got another RP calling saying more shots are fired. And I'm going, oh, well, we should probably go to this. And I remember Matt telling me when I reached over and I turned the camera on and I punched in an address with a lot earlier than I normally do. And I had it slewed and it was already ready to go. But he didn't have radios up because obviously he's doing his pilot stuff. And so he gets the clearance and we're getting ready to take off. He goes, what do we have? And I said, well, the guy just shot 3 people and he's reloading. Yeah. And he's kind of looked over at me like, what? And I said, yeah, we need to go that way. And I already knew that was on my old beat. And we turned the helicopter and we started hightailing there. And we were first on scene. located him, and saw the scene, and immediately went like, wow, this is the real deal. You know, it was kind of a mess. And located the shooter, saw him, recorded him actively shooting at other people, and then led the officers in appropriately and allowed them, you know, gave them a good understanding of where this guy was. It was an elevated pool deck, which I did not know, and you couldn't tell from the air. So when they're walking up on the path, they couldn't see up into the pool deck. So we had to, you know, use our communication to kind of let them know exactly where this guy was, and you know, ultimately, you know, they ended the situation. But it was a lot of stuff coming together all at once. You know, from coordinating with fire after, because I knew that it was going to be a mess and there's going to be a lot of crossing lines. So I jumped on fire dispatch, being a former medic, and say, hey, you guys are cleared in, like we're secure now, and you need to roll, you know, this is a mass casualty, so you need to roll multiple and call trauma centers and put them on standby, knowing that we're going to overload, you know, hospitals. And so it was kind of like one of those things where everything, all of your training and experiences came to light, you know.
How long had you been at TFO at that point?
At that point, I want to say, it's a really good question. I think I was probably about 4 years in, I think. About 4 years in. Yeah.
Wow.
I can't remember.
What were the numbers of victims and the outcome of that shooter?
So I want to say there was miraculously only one died. Wow. And then the rest were injured pretty well, like some critical wounded, and then, you know, some injuries from fleeing, like trying to jump over fences and stuff like that. But it was one of those instances where when you pan the camera and you look at the pool deck and you're going, wow, this is actually happening right now.
Yep.
So
that's an extreme example that illustrates the value of a helicopter in our programs, right? Because not only did you identify where the shooter was, you coordinated the team's approach, and ultimately, like you said, dealing with the suspect, and then also bringing fire in and kind of quarterbacking the entire scene. You know, I think of the incident commander on the ground, the sergeant, lieutenant, whoever's ever down there. He's got to be so immersed in whatever's taking place down there, doesn't have the forethought or the ability to disengage and be like, hey, roll fire. Whereas you as a TFO, you're outside of that chaos and you're quarterbacking everything. You know, I think that's such a great illustration of the value of our programs and kind of what we preach. So you never know if it's going to be day one as your time as a TFO,
right,
or whether it's going to be 3 years in. But
absolutely,
you leaned on the experience that you had garnered not only in aviation to that point, but as a police officer and as a person. You know, you used it in medic schools that you developed as, you know, your time prior to law enforcement. So you're leaning on all these different lessons you learned over the course of your life for the successful completion of this one mission. And that's huge.
Absolutely.
Bryan, again, I see the gears turning.
Thank you to our sponsor, Shotover. Shotover Systems is the leading developer and manufacturer of high-performance gyro-stabilized cameras with advanced real-time AR mapping and mission management, all backed by unparalleled custom training and support. Now offering the M2 multi-sensor system, sole 6-axis EO/IR platform with 4K Ultra HD color and infrared technology. Ideal for law enforcement and defense. Offered with real-time AR overlays to quickly identify streets, weather, and traffic. Automated license plate recognition, 24 megapixel digital photographs, and automated steering and tracking.
It's the smoke coming out of my ears. I probably tried to put these headphones on so you wouldn't see it, but I did, as I'm thinking about it and looking, and I see your shirt, that Jon, what you said, that's exactly the point that popped into my head is, that happened to Ryan because it was Wednesday. And if it was Thursday, it could happen to the rookie TFO whose first day operating solo. And have we as an organization given that new TFO the appropriate training to be close? Obviously, there's no substitute for 3 years of experience, to at least be able to handle that scene, multitask, give the officers on the ground a tactical approach, thinking about what they can see, thinking outside of the box about calling in, more ambulance and fire assets. And unfortunately, I'm sure, Ryan, you can talk to that point. In many places, if it was day one for that new TFO, they would have no hope of doing that. And that situation would have been a lot worse, possibly with brothers and sisters in blue not going home that night, because we haven't taken the time to appropriately train the person sitting in the seat to handle a situation. This idea of on-the-job training, you'll pick it up as you go. It doesn't apply, because that can be, congratulations, you're a new TFO on Monday, and Tuesday you're over a scene exactly like what Ryan is describing. And, how many times, Ryan, do you go to an agency and you talk to people who have been doing the job for years, and your class is the first time they ever had any kind of formal training? And as you're talking, and Jack, you know this as well, and you're saying something that you think is a very, very basic, you should know this before you're even up in training, and you see him feverishly writing down notes, and you're thinking, oh my God, that's what you're noting? You didn't know that before? And you quietly go on, you're like, holy cow, that recages where we are. How long have you been doing this job? 2-3 years, 4 or 5 years. And just basic skills that are going to save lives have not been covered. I think that's why it's very, very important to have training resources that, both you, Ryan, and Jack have been providing to people, because a lot of places just don't get it. And on a night like that, you made the difference. Somebody went home to their kids that night because of what you did. And what you did, not to take away from you, it was also a product of the training that you had received from that organization.
It's time for your Heli Life giveaway buzzword. Listen up and remember this word, because you'll need it to enter for a chance to win exclusive Heli Life gear. Ready? This episode's buzzword is Airbus. Visit contest.verticalhelicasts.com to enter the buzzword.
You're 100% correct. And the training is, that was the biggest blessing I had. It was scary, but I had Todd the entire time as my trainer from day one.
That is scary.
It is scary. So Jack, try this one on. My very first flight in the back seat was Todd flying, Kevin TFOing.
Oh boy.
And you sit back there and you go, there's no way I'm going to do this job.
Yes. Yeah. This is way above my ability
Zero
level.
shot. Yeah. I'm like, I might as well just leave now, It's
terrible.
And so, I'm just watching, and my jaw's on the ground, and I'm just soaking it all up. And then Todd from day one, and which I love about Todd, and Todd's he's my second father, and he already showed him that I would die for him and I would do anything for him. And I loved him so much because of the fact that he held me accountable. Yes. And he did not give an inch.
Oh no. There are standards.
Yes.
And those standards, I know your standards at San Diego because I know Todd and Kevin so well. And I know how high those standards are and what is expected of you there. And those standards are the reason that you could handle that call, even though you're 3 years in.
Yep.
But I'm going to jump here and say that I believe, based on what I know about you and Todd and Kevin and your unit, is that you could have handled that right out earlier, much earlier on, because the standards were so high and they were held. You wouldn't have been there. You would have been gone if you didn't meet the standard that gets you to handle that call. I believe you could have handled that call on your first day off probation because of those standards. Now, did you handle it even better 3 years later? Of course you did.
Right.
Of course you did. Like Bryan said, experience, experience counts for a lot. But the fact that you had an outstanding trainer that was very demanding, but calmly demanding, right?
Yes.
I mean, Todd's one of the coolest customers there is. He doesn't get riled up. He's an excellent teacher at anything. You could tell him to teach somebody to do anything, and Todd would have success at it. Why? Because of his demeanor, his personality, his intellect. He's smart, he's calm, he's cool, and you know it. I mean, you just gave him credit,
Absolutely.
and I know it because you know he's just good at it.
Yeah,
When we
100%.
talked to Matt, we talked about Todd and how, and I remember telling Matt what I'm about to say again. I learned a lot from Todd over the years. I'm on a different department, 2 hours north. And here I am telling you that Todd taught me so many things over the years, not just about being in a cockpit either.
Right.
Because he's that kind of person. And damn it, he better come on this podcast. We've been bugging him, Ryan, as you probably know. And, and this is his attitude. Oh, people don't want to hear from me.
Oh my gosh.
What do you think, Ryan?
Are you kidding me? I mean, that would send the ratings through the roof. I mean, it would be incredible. Not only does he have an unbelievable radio voice, but and he was a college radio DJ. But yes, but he and Phil Cady were both. But he just has a way, and I'll tell you, yeah, he's calm, cool, and collected.
Yeah.
But I know for an absolute fact, I push those limits with him because he has a thing where he will tap his fingers on the cyclic.
Oh,
and
really?
he did that a lot with me. A lot.
Great.
Especially at nighttime training with the 8500. I could not find any. The only thing I could find on the 8500 was the underside of the helicopter. That was it. And he was very patient with me and helped me out quite a bit. And then once I kind of got through that little bit of a hoop, then it was fun with him. And we worked really, really well. And I just, he is the reason why I was able to be successful. And even to this day, and I couldn't be more thankful for that opportunity. Yep. And that's what I take with me in every agency I go to, and Bryan, to your point, it's incredible, the oversight when it comes to training and how it is believe that this job, you can just get in there and, we have an $800,000 camera underneath us. That should be able to do its job. And it's like, well, it's not a whiz bang camera. Like it can't say, look for a bad guy and I'll find him, and so it's pretty eye opening, but, then again, now all we do is we bring all of our experience back in again and we figure out what we can pick off when we're there and how we can set that foundation. And then the thing that they understand with me, and maybe they don't like it all the time, but we always tell them, whenever I leave, I say, you're stuck with me now. And I say that to every kid that I coach. I say that with every kid I mentor, and I say that to every student that I teach. I said, you're stuck with me, and I'm going to check in on you, and I expect you to call me when you have questions, and we're going to go through this because, I was blessed enough to have that guy who I could check in with, and I can, help guide me, and not everybody has the Todds. And so that's the least that I could do is kind of like extend his legacy, throughout the airborne law enforcement. And hopefully that's going to kind of continue to grow, beyond my years when I am pushing up daisies, and I don't know, they're probably going to be on the FLIR 23,000 then or something. But,
beautifully stated, Ryan, beautifully stated. And Todd deserves all that. He will deflect that.
100%.
He will deflect all that and say, oh, stop it. It's all true. It's all true. And good for you for having that attitude, about his impact on you and how it affects how you deal with people now. The continuing the legacy. I love that.
Yeah.
Love it, love it, love it.
The word you said, legacy, that's exactly what I was thinking of as you're talking through this. Kevin and Todd, the legacy they've left behind, not only within your unit, but the community as a whole, our community as a whole.
Absolutely.
Based on the number of people that they instructed over the course of their careers, based on the influence they had, those folks at conferences, that influence or that impact is so hard to quantify. And Jack, I asked you at one point, how many students have you had? And Bryan, I'd ask you the same thing. With you and the safety program that you're a part of, think about how many lives you potentially saved as a result of all the time you spent doing research, banging your head against the wall, trying to get agencies to listen to what seems like common sense practice, but is not. I think it's really, really commendable that you all have spent the amount of time that you have, giving back to our community, teaching the next generation, creating that legacy. I think gone are the days now, we talked about on the job training, Bryan, gone are the days where we rely on the job training as the way that we learn how to do this, because there's so much capability now. And that's what I love about tactical flying. What you guys bring to potential students, to candidates that are even wanting to get aviation. Man, I wish tactical flying would have existed in the way that it is today when I was trying to get to aviation. You know,
absolutely.
The training you guys offer is phenomenal. Going to conferences is so important. Being a part of the community, not just, taking from the community, but actually giving back. Man, it's so, so important.
Yeah. Jon, can I jump in on this with Bryan?
Yep.
Bryan, the example with you that Jon just said, and I agree with everything he just said about saving lives. Bryan, think about inadvertent IMC. I recently quoted Bryan in an article I wrote for Valor. Bryan knows a lot about this topic. He spent a lot of time on this topic. He got panels together. He put out he had multiple ways to attack the problem, and that problem has decreased dramatically. Correct, Bryan?
It has, yes.
There you go. Lives have been saved. There's no doubt about it. But it was because of not just Bryan, others too, but Bryan's efforts. I know what he did on this. And so what you said, Jon, is absolutely true. And I think it's worth, Bryan, give us a synopsis of the inadvertent IMC, just a quick Reader's Digest of how you attacked that from your perspective, and how the message finally kicked in, where we have decreased the number of law enforcement officers dying in inadvertent IMC.
I think there's a lot of parallels with that problem and how we're now teaching, or should be teaching, TFOs. Because previously it was it was, I have examples of unit manuals where it would say inadvertent IMC is prohibited. So,
that's priceless.
That's
priceless.
Like the TFO, my first day as a TFO with a large agency, no training. And I said, can I learn something? He goes, the book for the FLIR's over there on the bookshelf. You can read it if you want. And an hour later, I was 20 pages into it. An hour later, we're over a homicide scene. And I wouldn't have been able to find a nuclear explosion with that thermal camera at that point, let alone a hiding bad guy. But it was the do better, don't suck kind of, analogy. And they were doing that with inadvertent IMC. Don't go in it. When if you do, just, don't suck, and you can fly out of it. And exasperating that for most of us helicopter pilots, the majority do not have instrument ratings. And the instrument training that you received wasn't specific to inadvertent IMC. So we put a group together like you do here on the show. And I knew that I wouldn't have the answers. I got some guys, specifically Glenn Daly.
Yep.
And some people that I knew had flown in weather and were instrument instructors. And we looked at all the crashes and we're like, well, people, even if they're training, they're not training to the scenario. And that was really the key. When we go up and train instrument training, we train like we're going to go get an instrument certification to fly intentionally in the IFR world. We're not training to inadvertently fly into it during the middle of a mission. And it was a different skill set. And that was really the key to switch it. Also, we have a perfectly capable professional, or should have a perfectly capable professional, sitting in the seat next to us in the aircraft. Why are we telling them to just shut up and hang on in every emergency? Let's involve them, double the amount of human horsepower, focus them both on a scenario, and make that scenario the inadvertent IMC scenario, where the cockpit is not pre-set up, where we didn't pre-brief anything. This is how it looks like on a patrol flight. and we pop into it. And now there's some great tools that go along with it, the view limiting devices where you can pop them in the clouds on your phone and stuff. So all of that, but again, to draw the parallel back to Ryan, I think that's with the TFO training as well.
Amen.
And it used to be go in, look out the window, find a bad guy, don't suck.
Yeah.
And keep practicing until you suck less. and it doesn't work. And if we were teaching them, it wasn't scenario-based training. There just wasn't a good teaching method out there. And I remember when I started, which was 22 years ago, and I had there was no training. When I started asking around and going to APSA, I'm like, how do I learn how to do this? People would say, look at what San Diego's doing. And I didn't even know the names at that point, but I knew to look at the San Diego stuff, every Airbeat magazine that came out, every opportunity I had, because they already had that legacy going. And for a number of reasons, but I think one of them is that they took the training seriously.
Absolutely.
You transformed that safety program. You spent 10 years, if I remember correctly. Was it 10 years running that program? And you created what has become the gold standard for safety operations in the law enforcement world. Again, banging your head against the wall. I can only imagine how tough it was at times, talking to agencies again about things that should be common practice. But you fought the good fight, and just commendable that you stuck with that. Safety is challenging. It's hard to get a student to come into a safety class and be engaged, but you found a way to do that. You did a really good job of creating a program that was not just to check the box, come and sit in here and learn about SMS. This is actually how to be a safer TFO, a safer pilot, a safer air crew. And we've benefited as a community because of the efforts you put in there.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Hangar Z Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors. Cheers.
Thank you to our sponsor, Shotover. Shotover Systems is the leading developer and manufacturer of high-performance gyro-stabilized cameras with advanced real-time AR mapping and mission management, all backed by unparalleled custom training and support. Now offering the M2 multi-sensor system, sole 6-axis EO/IR platform with 4K Ultra HD color and infrared technology. Ideal for law enforcement and defense. Offered with real-time AR overlays to quickly identify streets, weather, and traffic. Automated license plate recognition, 24 megapixel digital photographs, and automated steering and tracking.
Thank you to our sponsor, BLR Aerospace. BLR Aerospace's revolutionary fast fin system improves performance and enhances safety across various helicopter platforms. This cutting-edge aftermarket solution improves tail rotor effectiveness, stability, and payload capacity while reducing fuel consumption and pilot fatigue. Trusted globally, FastFin delivers unmatched control, efficiency, and reliabilities for diverse helicopter operations. Learn more at blraerospace.com.
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Hangar Z Podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicast in a partnership with Vertical Valor Magazine. We sincerely appreciate Ryan Welch for sharing his incredible journey and invaluable insights into law enforcement aviation and the evolving landscape of public safety aviation. We hope you found this conversation both inspiring and informative. Don't forget to follow us on social media to stay updated on future content, and please leave us a rating and review. It really helps others discover the show. Lastly, be sure to check out the other great podcasts available on the Vertical Helicast platform at verticalhelicast.com. Cheers.